Good morning. This meeting of the Louisiana Tax Commission is hereby called to order. This meeting is being held at the offices of the Louisiana Tax Commission at 1051 North Third Street, Suite 225, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. All right, and as with the previous, immediately preceding appeal, taxpayer and assessor in agreement, as the taxpayer and assessor in agreement here. We
Yes,
also
sir.
have an email from the taxpayer's representative. To the motion. There being no objection to the motion stands adopted. We'll now take up the appeal of 1128 Fern LLC versus Assessor Errol Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review. Docket number 22-22177-002. Just one moment, Ms. Gomber. All right, as with the previous appeals, we have an email from the taxpayer's representative indicating a settlement between the assessor's office and the taxpayer. So, Mr. Alvarez, go ahead.
Yes, sir. We have an agreement with the taxpayer's representative to set the fair market value at land, 141,600, improvements, 508,400, for a total fair market value of 650,000.
All right, any questions? All right, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move on docket number 22-22177-002 that the fair market value be set at the agreed upon value between the taxpayer and the assessor, setting land at 141,600, improvement 508,400, for a total fair market value of 650,000.
We have a motion. Is there any objection to the motion? There being no objection to the motion stands adopted. We'll now take up the appeal of Horatio Eustace Jr. versus Assessor Errol Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review. Docket number 22-22177-004. Again, one moment. All right, we also have an email from the taxpayer representative indicating a settlement between the assessor's office and the taxpayer. Mr. Alvarez, go ahead.
Yes, sir. We have a agreement with the taxpayers representative to set the land at 314,700, the building at 335,300, for a total fair market value of 650,000.
Are there any questions? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move in the matter of docket number 2222717-004 that we set the values as agreed upon by the taxpayer and assessor at land 314,700, improvements 335,300 for a total fair market value of $650,000.
All right, there's a motion. Is there any objection to the motion? There being no objection to the motion stands adopted. All right, now we'll move on with our docket. The appeal of SBP St. Peter versus Assessor Errol Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review. Docket number 22-22172-004. Again, just give me one moment. All right, there's a taxpayer appeal. Mr. Hilbert's here this morning on behalf of the taxpayer, so I'll ask him to please go ahead.
Joining me today is the CFO of SPB. Would like to make a statement about low-income housing and the plight of it in the city of New Orleans, with pretty much fixed rents or rents that are not keeping up because of the HUD formula. Average median income is not growing as fast as the expenses are growing. And certain companies, including his, is considering ceasing development of low-income housing in Orleans Parish, or the South in general, correct?
You want to change that, the whole about they can't hear you.
All right. Should I repeat all that again? So Keith McCulloch.
Hey, Commission. This is Keith McCullough. It's nice to meet you all. I am the CFO of SBP. SBP is a disaster recovery organization. Part of our focus is obviously providing affordable housing after inventory shrinks, and obviously our clients are looking to kind of relocate back to the city. We've been in existence for 15 years. Unfortunately, as over the last 4 years, as expenses continue to rise, we are getting pinched. Specific to St. Peter, we'll speak to L9 here shortly, but as Kevin alluded to, incomes just simply aren't keeping up with the expense rates. Last year, St. Peter lost nearly $80,000. And I'm concerned in the future about where we're going. As an example, and again, I know this is a 2023 issue, but our property insurance value increased $100,000 on this very project. I'm concerned, and certainly the tax rates that were being charged, I think, aren't necessarily reflective of that. And I'll just leave it to Kevin, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? No.
Before the presentation, the Orleans Parish Assessor's Office would just lodge our objection to exhibits provided by the taxpayer appellate No exhibits were provided to the assessor's office for us to review until Monday afternoon, which would not give us enough time to review any of the documentation that would be presented here by the taxpayer. When I questioned the taxpayer said that he did not have to provide it to the assessor's office because he provided it to the board of review. So I would just like to get that on the record.
Hold on one moment.
That is
If,
about
excuse,
half
excuse me, one moment. If you're more comfortable standing up and speaking, that's fine. Just hold the microphone up to your mouth.
Not only did I submit my appraisals and other requested information to two other people, the assessor's office, who contacted me in August of 2022. This regards St. Peter's. That's who received.
That is not,
Can
that is for the board of review.
This is not for the board of review.
The assessor's office did not receive any documentation the 45 days prior to the hearing. And when I explained it to Mr. Hilbert that he needed to, he said he didn't have to submit it because he submitted it to someone in our office for the board of review and submitted it to the board of review. We submitted our exhibits to the taxpayer on, March 9th, 2023 and March 16th, 2023, well within the guidelines for exhibit submittal. We did not receive anything in kind, and the assessor's office just wants to lodge our objection. If the document was for April, it was for the board of review and not for the tax mission purposes. And any documentation submitted, in August, it was for the board of review and not for the tax commission.
All right, this email from Kevin Hilbert to Jim Makita in the Orleans Assessor's Office. Okay, this doesn't talk about an appraisal, though.
Mr. Makita does not handle appeals for the Louisiana Tax Commission, did not perform the appraisal for our office that was submitted to Mr. Hilbert. Mr. Makita does do commercial work and only does commercial work for the board of review, so would have received any information in regards to a board of review challenge, not a Louisiana Tax Commission challenge.
But Mr. Makita does work for the assessor's office.
He works for the assessor's office, correct?
So anything that was given to him meant that it was given to the assessor's office.
For the purposes of board of review.
Well, that may be what his assignment is,
Yes,
but he still works in the assessor's office.
he does work for the assessor's office. That is correct.
Okay. But when I'm looking at this email, I don't see anything that talks about an appraisal. It says the addenda contains the tax credit regulatory agreement and is
They were
a half inch thick.
There were three emails I received regarding that, and each one was replied of the appraisal.
Okay,
Some
but it
of
doesn't
these
say
files were
appraisal.
so big, I had to break them into three
All right, well, I
to get them
understand.
through.
I understand that, but I don't see a reference in this email to an appraisal. I mean, is that what you're objecting to, is the
Yes, sir.
appraisal?
Well, it is an email. The email addresses are at the top of the page.
But the email does not refer to the appraisal. There's nothing on here that says that the appraisal was provided.
I have that at my office. So why would I send the addenda without sending the appraisal?
Well, I understand, but it doesn't say that. Mr. Alvarez, when have you ever been furnished a copy of the taxpayer's appraisal?
I was furnished a copy of the appraisal this Monday afternoon when I requested information from Mr. Hilbert.
So you did not, you did get a copy of the appraisal,
Yes,
but you
sir.
got it Monday afternoon, so
Yes, sir. I did not have time to review it
so
for,
a day and a half ago.
yes, sir.
All right, I think the best thing for us to do at this point is to, I'd like to make a copy of this and make it part of the record. And I'd like to also make enough copies for the commissioners to have and and also Mr. Alvarez to have. Just make a bunch of copies and make that document. We'll put that as part of the record. Okay. All right. I think the best thing for us to do will be to allow Mr. Hilbert to testify with regard to his appraisal. And the tax commission will delay, if that's the right word, any ruling on its admissibility to the point where we issue our decision. So, Mr. Hilbert will be talking about his appraisal, whether or not the commission can accept it as part of our consideration. We'll make that determination as we consider a ruling on this matter. I'm assuming you have the same objection on the next.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll do the same thing on the next appeal as
Yes, sir.
well.
We just wanted it for the record.
I understand. I understand. All right. Give me one moment. All right, and you did say you received the appraisal, but it was Monday of this week.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a day and a half ago roughly is when you got it.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Sorry to belabor this point, but I forgot I had this with me. And this is Arlene's parent tax appeal, where I was confirmed to have a Zoom meeting. And I uploaded the appraisal. Correct. And there's the document.
So the Orleans tax appeal is the Hammer Gamerman Incorporated, which is the law firm that handles the board review valuations. So if he uploaded something to Orleans tax appeal, it was not to the Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. That is a separate entity.
copies for the commissioners, for the assessor's office, and that's, keep that for our record. And again, it falls under the same consideration as the appraisal itself. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward and let's go discuss the appraisal. I'll present I should not say that, I should say make your presentation.
There are 3 points I want to make regarding Mr. Cater's appraisal. I believe it's Mr. Cater for the tax commission. On page 11 of his appraisal, the top of the page, it's stated as an income approach to value. The expenses that he showed right there are the same, almost identical to the expenses I show in my appraisal on page 19. For example, on page 19 of my report, I have expenses at $97,889. On his page 11, it's the exact same number. Payroll and related expenses, 70,446 rounded. I have 70,000. The one difference is in the administrative expenses. His expenses, administrative and marketing total $40,422. I used $42,837,000. And the difference is related to an expense itemized as internet service. on page 17 of Mr. Cater's appraisal, which is the addendum, toward the bottom of the page, they have utilities, and it lists electricity, water, sewer, internet service. I cannot find where internet service was accounted for in any other expense category. So my administrative expenses, as said, was $42,837,000. For some reason, Mr. Cater does not have a per se expense reserve. He does on the other property entitled L9, also known as St. Claude Garden Scattered Site. He presents capital expenses of $3,609. The Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, in the valuing of either scattered sites or apartment complexes, accounts for a minimum of $250 reserve fund. It's just prudent underwriting. For any Fannie Mac, Freddie Mac loan, that has to be entered in. I entered it into my pro forma. Those are the main differences. So it's, when I do that, who should I give that to?
Can I get a copy of that?
Yeah, you'll get a copy of it, and we'll make a determination on admissibility
Yes, sir.
when we render our decision.
Yes, sir.
This is included in your appraisal, isn't it?
What's that?
These numbers, the printed numbers are included in your appraisal, is that correct? Not the handwritten numbers.
That is not, that is Mr. Cater's pro forma. He
Okay.
presents on page 12.
Okay, with your handwritten,
Then I adjusted the
okay,
administrative expense to 40, I adjusted the administrative expense $2,415. I entered in the reserve fund expense, and I took out of his expenses the $3,609 capital expense. Capital expenses are not supposed to be put into a pro forma. It's not an annual routine expense.
what I'm looking at here, it says land, 435,900.
That comes
Subtracted from the 3,096,000 market value.
That comes from Mr. Cater's appraisal. The land is owned by a 501c3. The assessor has not been assessing the land or taxing the land. I have that here somewhere too.
Land may be on another tax bill.
The land is on another tax bill because it is a multi-building site. And the land is associated with another tax bill, not on this particular building, as I told Mr. Hilbert.
That's your understanding?
Now, which appeal, are you talking about St. Peter now?
Yes.
Okay, that's all, okay, I'm just making sure, because you brought up, I was a little confused, you brought up the next appeal.
Tax bill right here.
Could I clarify? St. Peter, the building in question is on a ground lease with a project called Toulouse Commercial. It's held in a separate legal entity that is a separate nonprofit entity owned by the nonprofit. And so effectively it's on a ground lease. And so there should be no value associated with the land. The value of that land as was presented is part of the Toulouse Commercial legal entity.
All right, this document that we're talking about right now, this one here, I don't know that this was not filed with the commission until this morning. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, what is correct? Okay, what is correct? When was this document filed with the tax commission? Okay, because as the document, if it's just being submitted to us now, we can't accept it into the record. So, Mr. Verscher, would you hand this back to Mr. Hilbert? You can talk about it. You can talk about it, but you can't, make it part of the exhibits.
I have the 501c IRS papers, and I have the lease with me. I don't know if y'all want to
Let
see
me-
that, or we
No, I
want to
mean, if it's
discuss
not
that.
filed with us, we can't accept it. If it's not filed with us,
Okay.
timely filed, we
But
can't
There
accept it.
is a IRS letter stating the recognition that the entity is a charitable nonprofit.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. On your appraisal, you included property taxes as a deduction, as one of the expenses. We do not accept that kind of presentation simply because what we're trying to determine is fair market value. And so we don't know what the taxes are based on fair market value. So, for tax commission purposes, we include the tax rate within the overall capitalization rate.
I recognize that, but this is the first time it's ever been brought up in 10 years I've been coming up here, but I do understand that.
And my point is that you have a value of, if I'm reading everything correctly, as submitted by you requesting a final value of $2,630,000. Is that correct?
That's what I was requesting,
Right,
yes.
okay. So if we go back and use the tax rate and include the taxes within the tax rate, we come up with a value of approximately $3 million. If I did my math right.
Could you repeat
And
that
you-
again, please?
If we take the taxes out, which will lower the expenses, and then we capitalize at your cap rate of 8.5%, which is similar to the commission's cap rate of 8.4681%. So for my purposes, they're the same number, 8.5%. If we capitalize the net income at 8.5%, we come up with a value of roughly $3,076,000 rounded.
That includes the land too.
The appraisal that includes the numbers as submitted by you from your appraisal.
What are we gonna do about the land?
Well, I think what he's saying is absent the land, didn't factor that. So the question is,
I did factor the land in.
meaning that it had a value of something? Or what did you-
No. I just gave the whole value, land and improvements. I didn't break it apart like Cater did. No, on page 23 of my report, I said reconciliation and final value conclusion, sales comparison approach to value, 2,625, income capitalization approach to value, 2,635, and then I concluded 2,630.
Your overall requested value is what number? land broken out between land and
$2
building.
million, $2,630,000.
Land at what number for the land?
I'll stipulate to Mr. Cater's number.
435.9.
Yes,
Is inclusive of the 2,630,000.
the $2,630,000 is land improvement.
You just didn't break it out.
I didn't break it out.
Think, Russell, you're dying to say something?
So I think the 3 million is inclusive of land and building, and the 2.6 is building only, not 2.6 is land and building.
Now,
That's
that,
not what the
Mr.
appraisal says.
Okay, I'm just asking, for my clarification. Because like I said, I didn't have a chance to review the appraisal in a timely fashion, so you're saying 2.6 is land and building combined?
$2,630,000, land and building combined.
Okay.
Okay, so these values include the land,
My value does.
does include the land.
Mr. Cater's total value does,
Does
but then
include the
he
land.
allocates it to land improvement.
Right, he separates the land out. Okay. Sometimes the exhibits that we get aren't really clear as to what somebody's asking for. That's why I go through the exercise of asking some questions directly to make sure that we understand what the parties are requesting. Mr. Hilbert, is there anything else you'd like to add or?
The only thing else I have to add is if you take Mr. Cater's value, deduct the land out of it, his value is on top of my value. Now, just the fact I recognize going over the different approaches.
Might I add, just again, as a reminder, SPP St. Peter does not own the land. The land sits in a separate legal entity, a separate charitable 501c3 entity. It is on a ground lease with that entity. So the fact that we're allocating, obviously, a value associated with that is something I just want to put on record.
You say like, Mr. Alvarez, you have something you want? Oh, okay.
Wait,
You're waiting for your turn.
yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Alvarez, why don't you go, unless you have some questions for Mr. Hilbert.
Just to clarify, he said that if you take the Mr. Crater's appraisal, deduct the land value, it leaves it at 2,700,000 some odd thousand, which is right on top of his value, but he's conflating the two because Mr. Cater's appraisal is the building only is worth around 2.6 million. Mr. Hilbert's appraisal is the building and land is 2.6 million. So they're not right on top of each other. His actual building value is 1.2 million as opposed to the 2.6 million that Mr. Cater's value is. And just to kind of clarify for the CFO, the allocation of the land out of the income approach to value, you do want that because that's actually how strengthening your argument as to a lower value that it shouldn't be worth the 3.1 million. So that's not something that you really want to argue against. And now when I reviewed the documentation that we presented for the or the exhibits that we presented to the tax commission, we did a pro forma income approach to value, which comes roughly identical to the tax commission's value. The tax commission's appraisal was $3,229,000. Our revised pro forma income approach was $3,138,000, which is less than $100,000 of value. I called Mr. Hilbert on Friday to tell him that we were willing to accept the tax commission's value after we remove the land value, so we would only value the improvements. He was not available because he was going into a doctor's appointment, so I told him, call me on Monday. On Monday came around, he called me, but he was going into another doctor's appointment, didn't have the information in front of him. So our office has actually offered to settle for the tax commission's appraised value because we recognize that our initial value was off and the commission's appraisal is virtually identical to our pro forma.
Your performer was what again?
$3,138,200.
Which is less
It is less.
than the LTC appraisal.
It is, yes.
So, okay,
I have no issue settling for our initial value. I actually also offered that to Mr. Hilbert, who declined.
My question though, well, we're kind of getting into your testimony now,
Mhm.
but, my question though is you have a cap rate of 7.8%,
Yes, sir.
which seems low.
Well, we
It's certainly lower than the cap rate used in the commission staff appraisal, which was 8.4681%.
yes, sir.
And when the assessors valuation pro forma, all the numbers the same, but using the commission's overall cap rate,
Mhm.
it reduces the value down to 2,891,000. I'll say 2,000,009. You want to talk round numbers. I just don't know where the much lower cap rate, overall cap rate comes from.
Yes, sir. And I have an explanation for that. So we based our cap rate for, on the RERC report for apartment housing. The base rate is 0.055 to 0.07 with an average of 0.63. And the project is relatively new. It was only constructed in 2018 and is located near the Lafitte Greenway, which is an up and coming and evolving residential and commercial district. They have a number of restaurants that just recently opened up, a number of housing, grocery stores. So we felt that because of the new construction of the property and the location where it was at, that we would use the average of 0.063. And then we added the tax rate of 0.014681 to give it a loaded cap rate of 0.7768. And that's why we have a different cap rate than the commission, because this is a highly desirable area of, that is being developed in New Orleans. And it's also brand new constructed property, sort of, 5
Now-
years old.
Your pro forma and the final value of 3,138,200. That's improvements only?
No, sir, that's improvements and land. So then we offered
Because
to,
on the submission on exhibit 1, you have zero value for the land and the 3,138,200 for improvements for a total of 3,138,200.
yes, sir, that was before we had a clarification that the land was not being added into it. So then I took the land, the 435 out of that. There's 3,138,200, and then I minus the 435, and I offered to settle with the taxpayer for a total building value of $3,094,700. I'm sorry, yes, 2,000,000, forgot a zero, 2,000,000, sorry, let me get the math right. $2,703,200. My apologies, forgot a zero.
Hold on one moment.
Because the taxpayer's representative and the taxpayer is correct, that there is
Okay.
land, but it
So-
was not a common.
So your final value is $435,000 for land. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What is the improvements?
$2,703,200 for a total fair market value of $3,138,200.
And that's using a cap rate of 7.8%.
Yes, sir. based on the overall, newness of the construction and the location of the, development.
Okay,
Russell, that's using the income approach, using the, information submitted by the taxpayer, or where did you, or is it, where did you get the information
So
on
we,
income?
we pretty much got the information, or the financials from the taxpayer. But we used that to come up with this value, only we used the, loaded cap rate because the taxpayer's information had, the income taxes in there. We didn't feel that was appropriate because this was a tax, value, appeal, so we wanted to use a loaded cap rate instead. So we did receive, income from the taxpayer, just not the appraisal.
Final
Right,
word
go ahead.
from me. I was very interested in the offer to settle with the Alvarez. But if you look in the addenda in my appraisal, I have appraised over 300 and something apartment complexes in the last 15 years. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac banks, every time you have to put in a reserve fund. If you just simply take the reserve fund, which is $12,500, and capitalize it at 8.5%, that's $141,000 right there. When I added in the extra $2,400 for admin, I was about $160,000. The internet connection, the $2,450. I cannot just wholeheartedly agree to a settlement until I talk to the client. Now, yeah, not only was I have a chronic problem. I go to therapy 3 times a week, scheduled. I was at home. I had nothing in front of me. Roughly between 11 and 11:30, from what I remember. And I told Mr. Alvarez, I said, look, I'll go to the office, which I did in my gym shorts after going to Oxford Hospital. And I couldn't get hold of Keith to ask him permission to settle. So it went on to the next day. And then we got together. We were this close to settle. I talked to Keith on Wednesday. So we'll settle right now.
It does sound like to me that there was an issue with the land,
Yeah, but it sounds like,
and
based on,
it sounds like you're getting that settled, right?
yeah, it sounds like based on how Russell just described it, I'm amendable to that settlement offer. And so, to be frank, yeah, I thought, the only thing I would offer is, again, Kevin was very optimistic, whether it was, I believe it was on Friday that there would be a settlement. And so, again, where the impasse or the space was, I guess it's
Well-
irrelevant at this point, but
My question is, what was that settlement number? And is that settlement number acceptable to both parties?
Our settlement number was our revised value, 3,138,200 minus the land for the 2,000,007 some odd. Put on the building.
2,703,200.
Yes, sir. That was a settlement offer, and if the taxpayer wants it, we're amenable to that now. We had no issue with that.
What is the number now? 3 million?
no, so the
Based on-
amendable 2.7.
2,703,200.
I'm gonna, just for the record, I'll take it.
Oh,
Yeah.
2.7.
We already have it broken out, 2,000,007.
All right.
I think he's
We're good,
being, I
we're
think
good.
he's being very fair.
We're good. We'll
All right.
take it.
All right, so where are we?
So the number is, for improvements, 2,703,200. Correct?
And 435,000 for land, but that really doesn't affect you.
It's separate legal.
It's a separate
correct.
issue.
Yes, the land value on this property will be zero.
Right.
It'll be allocated to another property that's not a.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me just make sure let me just make sure with everybody one last time that we're clear, okay? 'Cause I don't want us to proceed under something of false apprehension and we make a mistake and we gotta have a rehearing. So what we're saying right now is on this property, there would be a settlement agreement between both parties for improvements only, $2,703,200 for improvements only. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and have a formal motion by the commission and we'll vote on it and then we'll move on to the next appeal. Okay? All right,
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman?
Wood, go ahead.
I would move in the matter of docket number 2222172004 that we set the fair market value as agreed upon by the taxpayer and tax assessor. Land, no value improvements, $2,703,200 for a fair market value of $2,703,200.
Okay. And we'll make the note that the land is actually assessed on a separate tax bill.
Thank you.
It's not like we're putting the land at zero.
Yep.
It's on another tax bill. All right, we have a motion. Is there any objection to that motion? There being no objection to the motion stands adopted. We'll move on to the next appeal, the appeal of SBP L9 LLC versus Assessor Errol Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review. Docket number 22-22173-001 through 22-22173-030. Give us one moment. All right. I don't want to be overly optimistic here. But since there was a settlement on the previous one, is there any chance for a settlement on this one?
I like to settle, everybody likes to settle, but I can't do it unless, okay? But this one's very simple in my mind. Sure, Mr. Alvarez will not.
Okay.
I'm jumping to the end because we had the settlement on the other one. If we can avoid having to do another half an hour testimony and then settle, I'd rather do it up front. So does someone want to throw a number out there or was there talk about a number?
For the record, I, as the taxpayer, have not seen
Okay.
a number.
So initially, the board reviews at $3,863,700. The commission's at 2.8 million. We did a revised value, came in at 3.1 million. I would be willing to settle with you guys for the commission's value.
What's the commission's value?
2,800,000.
Yeah, land and building.
Land and building. It would be 283,900 for the land, 2,516,100 for the building, total value of 2.8 million.
I believe Mr. Cater has a reserve fund in his pro forma. All of his expenses. This property did not have a 12 months operating statement, just finishing leasing up. So, but Mr. Cater used ownership's 2022 budget, I think. So the loan concern, this property is in the lower nine. My staff would not go on inspection with me unless we had a police escort. That's how scary it is. There's not one block that any of the subject properties was on that did not have still damaged, Katrina damaged properties, overgrown lots. There was not one lot.
So I
That-
take that as a no then? You're not interested in settling?
I think the cap rate should be a 9.5 cap rate. And it produces a value of 2,635, 2,635.
I believe that's, is that different than what's in your appraisal?
Excuse me?
I believe that's different than what's in your appraisal, or did I misread your appraisal?
I had a value in my appraisal, 2.4, but you're asking me, could we talk about a settlement? I just think RERC, Real Estate Research Corporation, second tier is defined as an aging former first tier and average good location. This is not an average good location. There is a lack of investment in this area of the city. And it's deplorable, but it's getting worse. It's not getting any better. Third tier property, third tier investment properties are defined as older properties with functional inadequacies and or marginal locations. Okay, this is a marginal location. So I would be willing to settle for 2.7.
All right, let me make a statement, okay?
Okay.
And I'm not, it's always better to settle if you can, but if you can't, you can't. We'll just move on. Without digging into the roots of it, the commission staff appraisal was 2.8 million.
Mhm.
As I understand, the assessor's office value was
5.
3,152,000,
Yes, sir.
okay? The appraisal by Mr. Hilbert was 2.4 million, but it included a deduction in expenses for taxes. We take that out and use the 8.5% overall cap rate, which is virtually the same as it's within, I don't know, what is that number? 0.3 of a difference. So we use 8.5%, use your 8.5%, Mr. Hilbert used as his cap rate. And you adjust it for including the taxes. I came up with an overall value of $2,812,000. And the commission staff is 2,000,008.
Mhm.
So is there a number in there that the assessor's office can live with?
We're fine with the
Yeah, I
commission's
mean,
value.
Russell said earlier he's okay with 2.8.
The 2.8? Okay. Are you okay with the 2,800,000? Land, and that includes land.
Land included.
Right.
I will take that. Yes, I'm
Okay.
good with that
You'll
number.
take that. Okay. All right. Does anybody have those numbers worked out yet, or? Okay, well, if you have the numbers, if you could make a motion and separate land and improvements, will be good.
Mr. Chairman, I would move on docket 22-22173-001 through 22-22173-030, that we accept the value as agreed to by the taxpayer and the assessor. It's also the value of the LTC tax commission appraiser. Land, 2,800,000, land, 283,900. Improvements, 2,516,100, for a total fair market value of 2,800,000.
Yeah, sorry, did you ask a question? I couldn't hear you. Yep.
Yes, sir. I believe so.
We have a motion for an agreement between the taxpayer and the assessor's office. Is there any objection to the motion? There being no objection to the motion stands adopted. We have these tax bills that 30 separate tax bills. Do we need to worry about that or let the assessor and the taxpayer work out the breakdown?
I believe Mr. Cater provided an Excel spreadsheet with the breakdown for
Does he?
each
Okay.
property.
Oh, you're
and
right.
We're
You're
fine
right.
with that.
Okay, all right. What's that? We'll reflect the breakdown and we have, Mr. Katie, you included that in your appraisal. Okay, good. Okay, all right, very good. So I guess that does it.
Yep.
I want to thank you all for coming. I'm glad both sides were able to work it out. Thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
That concludes the docket.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our docket today. There being no other matters to come before the commission, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move adjournment.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there any objection to the motion? There being no objection to the motion